Good afternoon, everybody. Like Aki, I'm a bit, my brain is a bit wrong with time and time changes. In France, it's 10 at night, but when it's day here, it's night there, so I'm kind of mixed up. Anyway, not using my minutes, only just to say first, thank you to Emmanuel, Nicole, and all of the team that put up, Victor, and all the team that has been putting up the big project. Now coming to an end. We thought it would never end because 7 years to unfold the project is quite a good and exceptional opportunity in the academy. So you'll be hearing me twice, once on the French case and that will be tomorrow. That was very interesting also for me. This is also part of the conclusions of BIG that it was because of Canadians that I had to really put myself back to looking at my own borders, the borders of the country I live in, which I do not study usually, I go abroad. So this whole perspective of mixing up cases in the framework of comparative studies is exactly what is at the heart of my presentation today. The title I gave it is Developing and Applying the Big and Analytical Framework, Challenges for National Case Studies. And by the framework, I'm a little going to look at what I mean by the framework is this territorial position in the analysis of borders, and also the idea that we had to study borders according to definite thematic lenses, and showing how these lenses were or not pertinent in the case that I was studying. So 4 points, they will all be very short, of course. Well, first, the impact of BIG on French border studies. Second, the opportunities and constraints of this common framework, what it has led us to discover and not discover, unfold and leave aside. And third and fourth points are maybe more theoretical and interesting. I will also look at what it was really an implicit of the project that was never explained, that the borders of the country can only be understood by its internal actors. We were really, or at least the framework of the project didn't give much space for more than that. And that was really, it came to me to be more and more problematical as the years went by. And I will finish by the issue of national methodological nationalism and throw a few ideas to you to how to push border studies beyond that that methodological nationalism. So first result of big concern in France, border studies are not very developed in France because I'll show you why tomorrow. Borders are not an issue, a big issue in public policies in France. Borders are far from Paris. France is a French territory, has been stabilized as such for a few centuries, and borders are not only peripheral but considered as a peripheral issue. So from Paris and from the national government, and God knows France is a concentrated centered country, borders are not an issue. Even with the migration theme jumping into politics today, borders are still not really an issue, and in universities, border studies are not acknowledged as such. Actually, political scientists will downlook at border scholars, geographers will downlook at border scholars. French Academy historians, I see Birte here, the French Academy is still very much working in disciplinary silos, and there's not much space for border studies, borders in that respect. And the big network has helped, and the final report is showing this, to network the few scholars that do recognize and revindicate themselves as border studies people. So the always interesting role of a third person in the room. So second point, opportunities and constraints of a common framework. So opportunities were really important for us for scholars involved in this project, especially for methodological reasons, and to enlighten this always ongoing question that is really underpins all comparative studies. Should we better compare oranges between them, or should we better compare pears and apples? So is it more important to compare all the borders of the different countries, or compare borders, different regions of a country and border regions in respect with those? And that question is never really one that finds a clear answer, but in this case, we were kind of comparing different oranges and taking for granted that comparing oranges is an easy matter, which I think it is not, because most of the time, comparing pears and apples, for example, you get big trends coming out, and here in this case, there are very many similarities, but you have to go into details, and you have to go, finding the differences and the commonalities is not that evident. Time is running really, really fast, so second point also of these opportunities and constraints, the different lenses, history, culture, most of you know the big program didn't work that well. All of them didn't work that well with France, especially the flows and the economic one. I'm still juggling to finish and find the good people to help me finish the economies chapter, the flows chapter, because no economist in France thinks borders is a relevant issue at all. So nobody would really wanted to write that chapter, work on that topic. I've had discussions on monetary issues. I've had discussions on taxes. I've had discussions on very many things. But the political economy of border regions doesn't interest anybody at all in France. So it's a place for a new PhD maybe. An implicit that was never explained, the borders of a country, in this case, through this project, were expected to be understood only from one side of the country, that is the internal one, and only in the case of the governance chapter and the governance lens, we had the real opportunity to work with people from Belgium and the other side of the country. And I think this is where the most interesting thing happened. So in this kind of big consortium, it really is a challenge, because if you're going to have 20 countries, 10 countries, and have to work with, on both sides of each borders countries, that it demultiplies the number of possible partners, but I think this has to be taken into account. Last but not least, methodological nationalism. How do we push border studies beyond that? I'm building on Beck's studies on cosmopolitism and cosmopolitanism to work on this, calling for the cosmopolitization of border studies. That is trying to understand. Trying to push border studies into first understanding all of its concepts in a relational rather than and then in an encapsulating conceptual definitions, i.e. putting notions like difference and working categories in a different matter, offering also to border studies to work on ideas of sovereignty, citizenship, polity in a renewed manner that would escape from always looking at national, like in my case, French polity, French citizenship, French sovereignty, to analyze French borders. And more generally, and I think I will be done with my time approximately right with the clock, renew methodology in this respect. And I think that the really interesting results, Emmanuel, of what you pushed us forward to doing was to really confront ourselves with the borders of border studies, the limits of these national cases, and really offer that maybe for big 2.0, renewed methodologies to push forward border studies towards more cosmopolitan approaches. And I will finish here, Mr. President.